Welcome to the Jamie and Stephen Show. Let's talk movies, music, and magic. This week's episode is another spotlight episode. And once again, my sister Holly joins me.
Hello.
As we dive deep into the career of the trailblazer and one of my favorite people, Mr. Jeffrey Katzenberg. And the question we have for listeners and to obviously each other, is he a hero or a villain? Now, Stephen has already messaged me earlier today and notified me of his opinion. So I will reveal at the end. So, did you have fun looking into Katzenberg?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. And obviously found out some stuff that I didn't know, and things that he was involved in. But yeah, interesting. It's been an interesting couple of days.
Yes, I tried to see if I could find any interesting interviews with them, or ones that I could at least get through. But yeah, I managed to watch some clips, but I'll get to that later.
Okay.
Because yeah, it says a lot about his personality, I think. But at least the kind of interviews that I could find, I think, says a lot about him. Anyway, right, so he was born in New York City on the 21st of December, 1950. So he's 75 this year. To a Jewish family, son of Anne, an artist, and Walter Katzenberg, a stockbroker. He went to he went to New York University for 1 year before dropping out to work for John Lindsay, who became mayor of New York. Yeah, this is like the very beginning of his involvement in politics. And yeah, so he dropped out of university to be part of this guy's campaign. His career in film began at Paramount, where he started out as an assistant to producer David Picker. Then in 1974, became assistant to chairman Barry Diller. Then he moved to the marketing department after various assignments, including the very big task of reviving the Star Trek franchise.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which I was really surprised at. So obviously it had not been, like, the show had ended. I think this is like 10 years after the show was cancelled. And they obviously wanted something, he was like, right, we want to revive this, we own it, so let's see what we can make from it. And that was when the films were started.
Okay.
So it was thanks to Katzenberg.
Ooh. So what, they did the films first and then went back on to doing the series?
Well, he would have left by then.
Oh, right, okay.
But yes, so films were his task. Yeah, he came up with the idea of let's make them motion picture films.
Okay.
And then obviously because of that success, as well as other things, he became president of production under Michael Eisner, who became president of Paramount Pictures. So he oversaw the production of films such as 48 Hours, which is that Eddie Murphy.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
I think we did see them when we were kids, but yeah, it's Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte. There's a sequel as well.
Okay.
So yeah, so that Terms of Endearment and Indiana Jones Temple of Doom.
My least favorite.
Well, I put a star against that because I'm thinking could have that been his first time working with Spielberg.
Yeah, that could have been maybe where they met, or just the
And this
fact
could
that
be how that relationship
began.
formed.
Yeah.
And then in 1984, when Eisner got the job as CEO of the Walt Disney Company, Katzenberg was brought along with him to serve as chairman of the Walt Disney Studios. So he chose to focus on producing adult-oriented comedies to help revive the studio at the box office. They obviously felt that, because Disney had kind of attempted live action, with Treasure Island and the Robinson Crusoe, Mary
And
Poppins,
Family Robinson and all of
yeah,
that.
and his documentaries. They obviously felt that, they could maybe go back to that, but make it more for adults rather than family friendly. So 3 Men and a Baby,
Yeah.
Good Morning Vietnam, and Dead Poet Society, which is funny because we only spoke about them in the last episode. And again, I put stars against them because I'm thinking, could this be where Robin Williams, maybe his relationship with the company, because they were all produced under the Touchstone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously, how he maybe knows Katzenberg.
Yeah, through that to then go
from
on to the Genie. Yeah.
Yeah. And Pretty Woman. That's another one that was,
yeah.
that was a hit that was under the Touchstone.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So, again, like the Star Trek, he's done really well in the film side. Disney's made some money off of these adult comedies. And yeah, by 1987, Disney had become the #1 studio at the box office. They launched Hollywood Pictures, overseeing the acquisition of Miramax in 1993, and oversaw the Touchstone Television, which produced Golden Girls and Home Improvement. So now I'm going to get into the animation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He was put in charge with turning the animation studio around because obviously it wasn't making money. And by this time, when he's gotten this job, just to sort of run through a couple of things, just so listeners and yourself get an idea of the position that the studio was in. Fox and the Hound wasn't a hit. And Don Bluth had left and had taken animators with him. And this is also the period where Ron Miller had been in charge. So this was Walt Disney's
son-in-law, nephew?
Yes,
son-in-law.
And, yes, he had approved some great things and, which we've spoken about in previous podcasts. The animators that were now there were the up and coming.
Mm-hmm.
They were kind of wanting to do their own thing. They were trying to sort of make their mark and to get away from the traditional Disney kind of animated film. They wanted to do something that at that time were what children or boys in particular were into. And so they wanted to go down the fantasy
genre.
Yes, that's the word. And so they are in the middle of trying to finish the Black Cauldron when Katzenberg comes in. And he looked at the numbers and he told them all that they'd had far too long making this film because they'd been at it for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he says they were way over budget. So he said that they had to finish whether
what they were doing.
They were happy with it or not. They had to finish it. And he took it and he edited it, which pissed off everyone.
Yeah.
They were all fuming. Who does he think he is? He's come in here from a live action movie studio, and he's cutting our film like a live action film when that's not how we do it. And yeah, I think he cut it was either 8 or 11 minutes worth. But they claim, the people that were making the film, that he ruined the film by what he cut. And when me and Stephen did that episode, there were a few scenes that just didn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we think that that was where he'd gone a bit mad with the scissors
Mm-hmm.
in the cutting room. So to me, this situation gives us a really good idea of this person. You know, he was very much about, you know, the cost.
Yeah.
And he didn't like that they were going down this dark, you know, fantasy genre with like medieval story and whatnot. You know, he didn't think it was Disney, and he didn't think it was family friendly. It wasn't a hit.
No, it wasn't.
Lost money. But luckily, like, he didn't go in there and sort of fire everyone. You know what I mean? At least I'll give him that. He kind of said to them, look, you had your chance. You kind of messed up. You took too long. You didn't have the proper guidance. And yeah, okay, I shouldn't have maybe gone and cut it the way I did. And I didn't really know what I was doing. But something had to be done because it was too long and it was costing too much money, and it needed to be ready to be seen in the theaters, whether it was a hit or not. We had to get it out. And ironically, it is under his management that obviously they do eventually make hit after hit after hit.
Yeah.
I know Roy and him never got on.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Roy vouched for both him and Eisner to come on board, like, I don't think he realized the kind of character he was.
Yeah, once they were actually there working with him, it was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Because
You're
I'm sure, if I remember rightly, Roy takes a step back. So he doesn't want to be in charge of the animation department anymore. And that's when Schneider comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, he kind of just wants a seat at the board because of his uncle, and he wants his opinion to be considered,
Mm-hmm.
which Eisner obviously respectfully honored and did that. Right. So yeah, so the Black Cauldron is a major moment in his history at Disney. He doesn't really have another moment in terms of the animated films that I've written down anyway that I thought were important until the Oliver and Company production. Because although he didn't piss anybody off as far as I could find during the film, this is when he hires Howard Ashman.
Yes.
Which we spoke about in the Howard and Mencken episode.
Mm-hmm.
Very quickly, he wrote a letter personally to Howard Ashman offering him a position working under the Walt Disney Company for various stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Wanted him involved in projects. And it took him a little while, but eventually he convinced them. And yeah, Howard came and he wrote Once Upon a Time in New York City for Oliver and Company. So thanks to Katzenberg,
Yeah.
Howard Ashman is now part of the Disney team. Okay. So during Little Mermaid, another key moment is the song Part of Your World. Now, again, Katzenberg famously wanted to cut this song out of the film. They'd done a screening of the film for children, and apparently during this song, they were bored. Some kid had spilt his popcorn, and he made a note that the kid was more occupied eating the popcorn off the floor than watching this girl singing about her dream.
Mm-hmm.
And despite the amount of begging that both Howard Ashman, Ron Clements, and John Musker did, he was adamant that no, this is being cut. I know this means a lot to you, but I'm in charge and I don't think we need the song. I think, but whatever. Anyway, And it was the animator of Ariel, Glenn Keane, that went to him and said, look, you need to do another screening, but this time you need to do it with adults as well, which Katzenberg reluctantly agreed to. And the adults, apparently, you know, some were crying. And, and they were glued. And and then later on, Katzenberg would say in an interview that he was so glad that he was wrong, because he said he would have made a mistake, because, you know, he says he can't imagine that song now not being in the film.
No.
I mean, could you imagine if he got his way?
I mean, I know that that's not the song that won an Oscar or anything. It was Kiss the Girl, wasn't it, that got the Oscar?
No, it was Under the Sea.
Under the Sea, sorry.
Yeah, but they were both nominated.
Yeah.
Kiss the Girl and Under the Sea, yeah.
But still, it's like such a huge moment. And it is the song in the Disney parks that is the one that's played from the film, you know, as part of, you know, the fireworks. Might not be part of, you know, the parades, but especially in the Disneyland Paris one, and the fact that she sings it in French, it's, and everybody sings along to it in all the, like, whatever language it is that they know the words to. And it's amazing. It's like right up there with Let It Go.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's Howard Ashman does call it something when the female lead sings about what her dream is, you know, which he says is a intricate part in the storytelling.
Yeah.
You know, they all have that dream, that I want song.
Yeah. And everybody, it seems to misunderstand the film and thinks it's all about her becoming human because she's in love with Eric. And it's like, no. Backtrack.
Yeah.
The song tells you what the story is.
He just was a bonus. She was like, oh, well, I've definitely got to get up there.
Yeah.
He's up there. But she always did want to go up.
Yeah. And that's that. The song sets that up.
I know. Thank God. Thank you, Glenn Keane.
Yeah.
So, so then after The Little Mermaid, another key moment of Katzenberg is The Rescuers Down Under. Now, I do like this film, right? And when we did this episode, like we did it with Sophie from Most Magical Guides, and she's near enough the same age as me, and like me, she remembers, you know, when this film came out. Yeah. And obviously I don't remember, when you're a kid, you don't know what films were a flop or not. You just see a film, you watch it, you love it, and that's it.
Yeah. And we had it on all the time.
Yeah.
We had it on video, and it got played weekly.
Yeah. Well, I was saying to them how we had this on more than The Rescuers because of the period that this came out. You know, it was like, came straight to video, whereas The Rescuers, I think it wasn't until it was an anniversary and then we got it on video.
Yeah, so we had Rescuers Down Under before we had Rescuers.
I think it was a pirate copy of Rescuers that we had.
Possibly, or it was taped off the telly or something like that.
But so in regards to Katzenberg and this film, so there is a point just before the film's released that they re-released The Rescuers.
Okay.
Cinema. It's not long after this that they stopped doing that. I think this is one of the last films that they do. And obviously the reissues of the films in the past have always been hits. And what was initially a flop in its first release became a hit when it was re-released. You know, the likes of Fantasia, Pinocchio, etc. But The Rescuers failed miserably. And this was its first re-release and only re-release. Don't re-release it again. And so because of that, before Rescuers Down Under is even released in the cinema itself, the company have already decided that because of The Rescuers not being a hit in the cinema the previous year, they have said, well, this film is not going to be a hit. But because of how far on it was in production, they couldn't pull it. It was too far in. So they had to keep going. And then when it opened the same weekend as Home Alone.
Oh yeah, I remember.
And Home Alone
saying
was
that.
the biggest film that year.
Oh, yeah.
So again, its numbers on its opening weekend weren't great. And because of that, Katzenberg pulled all advertisements, all TV ads, everything. He just told the team, well, you know, this is it. We just have to accept this wasn't going to be what we thought. So let's move forward. And instead of, because they would have paid all those adverts, he just pulled them and they just threw all that money away.
Yeah.
Whereas I felt as though if they'd kept those adverts, it may have been done better over the Christmas season. After all those people who'd been in to see Home Alone, they might have gone and then gone to see Rescuers Down Under. But because he pulled all those advertisements, just not even giving the film a chance. Because as we know now, just as an example, last year, both Inside Out 2 and Moana 2 were not instant hits. There was another one as well that they released, and it was a live action. I can't think what it was. Cannot think. But anyway, and they had slow growth.
Yeah.
And over time,
yeah, the films have been really successful.
Yeah, well, Inside Out grossed over $1 billion. Moana 2, I'm sure that is just hit $1 billion.
Yeah, and it's still in the cinema.
Yeah, well, it's coming on Disney Plus soon. I think it's next week.
Were you wanting to say Mufasa?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I think it was Mufasa. No,
Mufasa I think was like instant hit in like the first week.
But yeah, so like I say, Inside Out 2 and Moana 2, it took a couple of weeks. But ultimately, they were hits.
Oh, yeah.
And they both, like I say, over $1 billion.
Yeah, I mean, even I didn't go and see Inside Out 2 when it first came out. Same with Moana. I think it was, we only went to see Moana 2 weeks ago.
Right, okay. Well,
and the same with Inside Out 2. God, I think it was like 4 or 5 weeks after it was released before we went in to see it.
Yeah, so this need for, everyone's got to rush to the cinema the opening weekend to see it, otherwise it's a flop. That's just... But that's how they thought.
Yeah. There was no time to mess about. It's like, oh, right, it's a flop. We need to move on to the next thing.
And the thing is as well, which, he obviously wasn't thinking about, is that in regards to any animated film has got so much more competition than your average live action film, because you've got to have something to make adults want to go and see it in the cinema. So I think with an animated film, when it's going up against live action films at a weekend, I don't believe that it's going to be a hit instantly. It does need that extra time to make the money. And this is just an example, I feel. Anyway, right, so I think we've talked about that long enough. So Beauty and the Beast. So something that I wanted to mention from this is, and this is a positive. So again, it's related to Howard Ashman. So the previous positive was obviously him bringing Howard Ashman into the Disney family. And in regards to Beauty and the Beast, When Howard told Katzenberg about his diagnosis with not that is that the right word?
Of his diagnosis.
Yeah. The diagnosis that he had AIDS.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd contracted AIDS. Katzenberg was like, right, okay. Because apparently Howard was nervous because he wasn't sure if because it was still known as like, a gay disease by a lot of people who were ignorant.
And he's meant to be working on for a company that make kids movies.
Yeah, he wasn't sure how they were going to react.
Yeah.
And especially in those days, I can imagine that, it must have been really scary trying to hide that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And I can imagine maybe it could be getting this wrong. Katzenberg maybe comes across as a bit of, this like, even though he's working for a company that's meant to be all about making family films, is he understanding the people that are working under him's personal lives and what's going on? And like, does he really have time for that? Or is he a bit like, oh, I don't really care about your problems. This is your job.
Well, I guess because bosses are like that,
Yeah.
aren't they? But this isn't what happened. So thankfully. And I think it's because, outside of work, they did see each other as friends. They both knew same people because of New York, etc. And Katzenberg said, right, no problem. What do you need from us? What can we do to help? And he's the one that arranged, he helped arrange the recordings of the music be moved to New York. It was in a hotel in New York so that it was closer for Howard. So all he had to do was get the train from his home outside of New York in, rather than getting on an airplane and flying to Los Angeles. Well, to get to Glendale or, Burbank. So I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
And so unheard of back then. And I think it was because of their friendship outside of work, because of their mutual friends as well. Don't know if he would have done that with anybody else, I'm not sure, but thankfully, he was kind and he did come up with this great idea to bring the recording to him, which is wonderful.
Hopefully appreciated the success that Howard had brought.
Yes, well, he in the Howard in the episode that we did about Howard Ashman and Alan Menken, I did say about how Katzenberg believed that there were two angels during his period at Disney, and he felt that one of them was Walt Disney himself and the other was Howard Ashman. So he obviously thought very highly of him. Right, now it's Aladdin. Now, we touched on this drama last week, well, in the last episode, I was going to say last week. In the last episode when we talked about Robin Williams, because we went a bit more into this. So I'm not going to go into it again.
No.
But yes, Katzenberg is the what's the word? The baddie. We'll say a baddie, right?
Yeah.
So he agreed, along with Eisner and Roy E. Disney and Wells, that because Robin Williams was going to take a low salary to do the voice work for the genie, they agreed that they would not exploit his fame and use him to sell the movie, or use his likeness and the genie to sell merchandise like Burger King toys, blah, blah, blah. And obviously behind Robin Williams' back, Katzenberg went and fucking did it anyway.
Yeah.
And Robin Williams called him on it and publicly, and said he would never work with him or Disney again. Yeah.
And it kind of, it kind of taints the movie a bit, knowing that this is how they behaved.
I know.
When there really wasn't any need for it.
No. And as we touched on in the Robin Williams episode, this is obviously a big part of why in his will he demands that his likeness,
his voice,
his voice can etc. cannot be used until 25 years after his death. And they're now the property of a foundation that a charitable foundation. So they're in charge. And after 25 years, it will be their decision to say, yes, okay, you can do this. So, yeah. And that's, I think, because of Katzenberg. And it's a shame as well, because obviously, like we said earlier, they've had some sort of history together, because, Katzenberg is clearly formed a relationship with Spielberg, which we're going to get to soon when he leaves Disney. And, he clearly formed a relationship somehow with Robin, because, they produced two of his live action films.
Yeah.
And he went and did that to him. Awful.
Yeah.
Like, he had some balls, honestly.
Yeah, well, it's as well, it's like I said, how he tried to sabotage Fern Gully.
Yeah.
I mean, why?
I know.
It was this little low budget movie that was being done on the side to do with Earth Day and bringing awareness, to kids, a bit of an educational movie with a twist.
Yeah.
They'd managed to get, quite famous and well-known 90s actors at the time to do voices. And Katzenberg was like, no, he's the voice of my genie. That's not happening. You're not getting to do that. And tried to sabotage the film. And it's like, this isn't going to, it's not even in the same range as what you're doing. Like, you really don't need to worry.
I know.
But he was just adamant that it was just like, no.
I wonder if it was because of although it's a different film company, but, obviously, like, Don Bluth became a very small threat at one point. His low budget and dark stories were bigger hits and beat a few of the Disney films at the box office.
It made them have to, up their game a little bit.
Yeah, so unless it was because of that, maybe because of the casting of Fern Gully, maybe Katzenberg thought, oh, well, they've got quite a good cast there. I need to slow this down, or, not make this an issue, as in this can't be another animated film that's going to come out of nowhere and swoop in.
Yeah, which it wasn't.
No.
Like, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. Anyway, moving on. Right, The Lion King. So, like The Little Mermaid, he's a baddie in this again. Like The Little Mermaid, he wanted to cut Can You Feel the Love Tonight? And Elton John saw a preview screening of the film about a month or two before its initial release, and the song was cut in that version.
And he's like, where's my song, bitch?
Yeah, because again, like Robin Williams, Elton John agreed to work on this film as long as he got a ballad. That was his terms. He said, I will work on the music. Yeah, I'll help Tim, but I'm going to write a ballad. And
you're going to like it, and it's going to be in the film.
That's because at the time, that's what he was doing. And he says, yeah, I'll do it if you let me write a ballad. And again, they agreed. But Katzenberg was like,
oh, it's a snooze fest. Kids are falling asleep. Want to cut it. No.
And yeah, and Elton had to beg him, like lobby it and say, no, you need to put, and it's a good bloody job because obviously it won the Oscar. Like
this guy.
I know. And obviously if which I've mentioned loads of times over previous episodes of the podcast, but in the Waking Sleeping Beauty documentary, it highlights how much Katzenberg was basically trying to take credit for The Lion King.
Even though they were the B team.
Yes, because Pocahontas was supposed to be the hit.
The hit, yeah.
Where I think Katzenberg, as soon as it was coming together, he must have thought, oh my God, I think we are making something so special here. And at the time, he knows that there's rumbles in the jungle between Eisner and Roy and the boards wanting to boot him. And I think he must have thought, well, fuck them. I am going to milk this as much as I can. And yeah, he's at every press. Like he does all sorts of stuff for this film. He's doing interviews and like, oh, the cringing scene when he's on that stage with that lion. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed for him. It's so embarrassing because that lion then goes for his arm, and you see him trying to tug his arm out. And I'm like, oh my God. You know, and he famously sits there with a lion cub on his lap in one of the interviews as well. Like, oh my God. I mean, for somebody who looks like he's got a tiny head, oh my God, was his head fucking huge.
Yeah.
At this point. Like he really thought, I am the man.
Yeah.
You know?
This is my film.
Two other positives that I want to mention. So in between Aladdin and The Lion King, right? I have to point out that Katzenberg is one of the people who came up with the idea of a Goofy movie.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Which we talked about in that bonus episode.
Yeah.
He wanted a movie about the relationship between a parent and a child, to honor his relationship with his daughter. And at the time they wanted to revive Goofy as well. So it was like, right, well, let's do something with that.
Yeah, so, and I think they did a really good job.
Yes, we like a Goofy movie, and yeah. So
I know I only gave it a 2.5, but like, because I did. It's
okay.
Like,
I liked Goofy movie.
Yeah, but you know, you can't deny, because I just don't like Goofy. That's just my thing, and I'm just not into Goofy at all. But I know yeah, they did something special there with Goofy movie, and it's got such a huge following.
Yeah.
Between the songs and, you know,
well, only the other night in Disneyland, they've just had the 90s night.
Yeah, so the songs from that will definitely.
And Max was dressed as Powerline.
Yeah,
and the guy farmer that does the voice of Goofy.
Uh-huh.
Him and her that's the voice of Megra, Sue
yeah.
Egan.
Uh-huh.
They were given proper old school cameras with film, and they were let loose among the guests in the park, and they had to take photos and like interact with them all. And so yeah, the fact that, you know, him and Max dressed as Powerline were like the two things that kept coming up on my threads were clearly hits with that. So yeah. So yes, so thank you, Katzenberg, for that idea and making that happen. Because as we know, that film was finished, but because of The Lion King, they released it after in 1995. And then the last positive thing I want to mention in regards to key moment at Disney, and again, this happened obviously before the release of Lion King. He made the deal with Pixar to produce 3D computer-generated animated movies and greenlit the production of Toy Story.
Yeah, well done.
So yes, that was a very good of him. Sadly, you know, which I have written down, you know, Frank Wells, who was the vice president and whose job Katzenberg was promised. So early on, so many years before, so we'll say late 80s, Katzenberg had gone to Eisner and said, I want Frank's job. Can you just get rid of Frank? Because it should be me and you, not you and Frank, blah, blah, blah. And Eisner went, no, I'm not getting rid of Frank. Because although personally, Eisner and Frank Wells didn't necessarily, they weren't like best friends, but they were a balance. They balanced each other, which is why they worked so well. But Eisner promised Katzenberg that the day that Wells leaves, because he was much older, that, yeah, Katzenberg could have the job. But Roy swore to Eisner that he would make big problems with the board and Eisner if Katzenberg got given Frank Wells' job.
Yeah.
Because Roy did not like Katzenberg.
No.
So yeah, so when Frank Wells passed away in that helicopter crash, yeah, Eisner didn't give the job to Katzenberg, and instead he took on the responsibilities. So and yes, in October 1994, he left Disney and later co-founded. Now, it says he co-founded Dreamworks the same year, right?
Yeah,
now,
that's what I've got. So I think maybe this was something that was already being planned.
I think when he got wind that he was going to be pushed out,
yeah,
he must have been having talks.
Yeah.
Because for him to have left officially in October and then...
I've actually got that it was August that he left.
He might have walked away in August, but he must have been paid until October. I think that was when his contract was up.
Yeah.
So he was basically allowed to be paid until then.
Yeah.
But he could walk away in August, which he did.
Yeah.
So yeah. So yeah, he must have had things already waiting, because he must have known that this was coming. And yeah, later he sued Disney for money he claims he was owed. And it was funny because one of the things that I watched today about was his original contract. It was to do with Roger Rabbit. Apparently he agreed to take a 2% net pay, but because of the way the company was running, it was running in a deficit or something. I'm not financial clued, so don't really know what that means, but basically it meant that he couldn't get paid from the profits, even though that was in his contract. So it might have been from that he felt he was owed money. And yeah, it was settled out of court in 1999, and he got $250 million.
Yep, he sure did.
Yes.
Yeah, so like I say, I've got written down here, August 1994, Jeffrey Katzenberg was ousted from Disney. So yeah, people had gotten together and they were like, no.
Yeah, he got the boot.
Yeah, well, I've done like a bit of a Shrek line.
Okay.
End of story. Bye-bye. See you later. And he turned to his long life chums, Spielberg and Geffen from Geffen Records, where as a trio, they put $33 million each in together and created Dreamworks, S for Spielberg, K for Katzenberg, G for Geffen.
Oh.
So you've got that SKG just underneath.
Yeah.
DreamWorks Animation and all the other, because there was DreamWorks Animation, there's DreamWorks TV, there's DreamWorks this, DreamWorks Records. So it was, they originally began working out of the Amblin Studios, and because they didn't have a home.
No.
So Spielberg's obviously like, oh well, you know, I've got loads of homes. I've got places like coming out my arse. So we'll just park in here. And Katzenberg then started poaching as many animators as he could that he'd worked with and that he knew to come on board this new company. And
so he did it on Bluth.
Yeah. And a lot of these animators and directors and storyboard writers and things like that, they had worked on Don Bluth films as well.
Okay.
A lot of when I was flicking through the movies that they'd been a part of, American Tail was there, Land Before Time.
Yeah.
They were popping up.
Mm-hmm.
And this was when you started seeing, so like in the DreamWorks films, they have other production companies named as well. So it's not just solely them. They were using other production companies to help with the financing and get these movies out there. Main one being Universal, and obviously Amblin.
Yeah.
So they started with Ants in 1998. And there's a bit of a story with this because obviously he says he's like, Bug's Life? Bug's Life? Like, what's Bug's Life? I don't know anything about Bug's Life. And John Lasseter's like, yeah, you did. Because when we were making the deal together, we spoke about it.
Yeah.
So don't lie. And Ants was done very, very quickly.
Oh my God, you can tell.
Yeah, it was done super fast. It was done in like half the time that Bug's Life was done. And were released within 4 weeks of each other.
My God. I remember vividly thinking, because this was where I instantly disliked DreamWorks. And I wasn't a Toy Story fan, but I loved Bug's Life.
Oh yeah.
And I
Bug's
remember
Life
us
was one of the
that,
first, it was the first DVD we had, I think.
Yeah. And I remember thinking, oh my God, they've like copied.
Yeah. And it was rubbish. It's boring. I tried to watch it this morning. I couldn't. I was just like, oh my God, so bad. Like
but the cast.
Oh yeah. And this is something again that he's kind of known for.
Yeah, well, like he obviously wanted to do this with Disney.
Yeah.
And
he thought I
uses and abuses this big time.
Yeah.
And that film only had people going to see it because of that cast.
Yeah, because it's really bad. The animation's bad. The story, I couldn't even tell you what the story was because I put it off. It was
Yeah.
But thankfully, they did also have another film in the bag that they had been making for 4 years, which they had done the research for. They had taken the time. The animators that they got on board, the directors that they got on board, the voice actors that they got on board.
Yeah. The music.
Oh, so the film is The Prince of Egypt, because this is my favorite.
Okay.
Up until this day of DreamWorks, this is my favorite film.
Right. Okay.
And then you had El Dorado, which was again released within weeks of Disney's Dinosaur in 2000.
Okay.
And then came Shrek, which again was released within weeks of each other with Disney's Atlantis in 2001. And I've just ended with Spirit of the Stallion, which again released within weeks of Lilo and Stitch in 2002.
Okay.
So this was like the first 6 films, and they all were released the same time as a Disney film. Some they won, some they didn't. Because as we know, Dinosaur, Atlantis, and even Lilo and Stitch, even though Lilo and Stitch is obviously massive now, at the time these movies were released, they didn't do well.
No.
But Shrek did.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, weirdly, Jacob put it on today.
Yeah.
And I thought, no, do you know what? I'm going to sit and I'm going to like properly watch, I'm going to put my phone away. And yeah, I was watching it.
And so from 1994 to 2004, Katzenberg was fully in charge. And like I've got here, he insisted that he knew nothing about Bugs Life. What a liar.
I smell shite.
Yep. So DreamWorks then in 2004 became a public corporation. Funnily enough, Paramount became a big contributor around this time to the animation, DreamWorks animation. They were the ones that were like coming up with the movies and what was going to be happening and blah, blah, blah. And that was including with the live action. So yeah, like I say, all 3 of them were still heavily involved. So Spielberg, Katzenberg, and Geffen were still very much involved in the company and what was happening. You know, they were very hands-on, but it was no longer like their baby anymore. There was all these other people and production companies and everything all getting involved now.
Okay.
And then that's where Shrek 2 then came out.
Right.
So Shrek 2 came out in 2005, and it was their biggest success to date. It made 998 million. So
oh my God.
Yeah, 2 million short of making $1 billion.
Bloody hell. In 2005?
In 2005. And then from there, obviously, the DreamWorks films have done really well, and they've got great franchises like Shrek, Madagascar, Kung Fu Panda, you know,
Trolls.
We've now got Trolls. Yeah, that Spirit of the Stallion, that's actually done really well.
Yeah, that's got loads of spin-offs.
Yeah, that's really, really popular.
And I think there's a series as well.
Well, obviously, coming to like sort of Netflix really kicking off, they made deals with Netflix and they did all these little spin-off series of their films and did
shorts,
like holiday shorts, things like that. Yeah. And obviously the How to Train Your Dragon it's been a huge success as well, and that is a way to come out as a live action some point in the next couple of months, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I know that obviously he's not there now.
No, but it's because of him with DreamWorks and that first 10
But how
years.
weird is it that, now they're doing live action
Yeah.
of their animated films?
Yeah. So yeah, Universal bought the company in 2016.
Okay.
And once again, Katzenberg was basically told, we don't really need you. We don't really want you. So they huffed and they puffed and they signed an eviction notice for Katzenberg. And that was it. So if we go back, so the movies that he was heavily involved with that first 10 years at DreamWorks, so Ants, like I say, 1998, it's got a 6.5 rating on IMDb, and worldwide it's done $172 million.
Okay.
And then Prince of Egypt, same, 1998, that's got a 7.2 rating. And worldwide, that's done 218 million.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, from there, we've got El Dorado. That really did not do well. That was released in 2000. It's got a rating of 6.9, which I was quite surprised at because I really struggled when I watched that today. But I did. I made it to the end. That made 76 million. So,
oh God.
Yeah, not good.
Even Rescuers Down Under did better than that.
Yeah. And Katzenberg was actually an uncredited director on El Dorado.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So not good. Bless him.
Yeah.
He tried to get his director's hat on. And when it was a flop, he was like, oh shit, take my name off that one. Take my name off that one. Then we've got Shrek.
Yeah.
2001 has a rating of 7.9.
Mm-hmm.
That made $489 million.
Wow.
And then Spirit of the Stallion, 2002, 7.2 rating, has made 122 million.
Okay.
So, yeah. So from obviously getting the boot in 2016, he went on to get involved in a company called Quibi.
Oh, yeah.
So, which, didn't, like, that was it. By 2020, the company shut down. And Katzenberg said the shutdown was due to the sudden change in how audiences consumed media caused by the coronavirus.
Yeah.
So, basically, it's a mobile-based Netflix, whatever that means. That's what Quibi was.
Yeah.
So yeah, their investors included Disney,
Yeah,
NBC, Sony, Viacom, AT&T's newly rebranded Warner Media. But yeah, wasn't a success, whatever that was, whatever that was meant to be. But no, from all the research that I've done over the last couple of days, couldn't find anything bad about his time at DreamWorks.
no horror stories.
Yeah, no, like literally absolutely nothing. Nobody saying that, it was like a toxic environment or that he wasn't a nice guy to work with or blah, blah, blah. Because like I say, he was really, really hands-on in that 10 years of being in charge of the animation side. And as far as I'm aware, isn't actually part of anything. So maybe he's just enjoying his money.
Yeah, I think he's, well, we won't go too deep into it because that's not what this podcast is about. But obviously, I mentioned at the start how when he left university, so when he dropped out and he joined that campaign, that was the start of his love and interest in politics. And see, throughout his career working in the film industry, he has always been involved some way or another in politics. Currently, him and his wife they do a lot of charity work.
Oh, that's
And
good.
I think that's what they do now. Because he's got money.
Yeah.
Like he's
He got
loaded.
he got 250 million. So we know he's at least got that.
Oh yeah, he's at least got that. But yeah, no. Like they are, so yes.
And he's probably still getting Shrek money and El Dorado money.
Yeah, I'm sure there was probably something in that clause that meant that he could still get paid because he was clever that way. And obviously, with the mistakes he made with his contracts previously at Disney, he made
anytime somebody says gumdrop buttons, he gets like $1, $1.50 maybe.
So yeah, when I read about his personal life, he does have a lot of famous friends, and political friends due to, you know, him as a person, and because of his charitable contributions. And yes, I think that's what him and his wife are focused on at the minute. But yeah, who knows? Obviously, that Quibi turned out to not be a success. He obviously wanted to try and go down the tech road. He may come back being involved in something else.
No, cats. Just enjoy being 75.
I know.
Yeah.
I can't see him just settling though, because
maybe an El Dorado live action.
Maybe. He very much wants to be front and center.
Yeah.
Right. So the big question, is he a hero or a villain?
I'm not saying that he's not made some mistakes and clearly has had some bad choices that thankfully people were able to, win over. But no, I wouldn't say he was a bad guy. I think he's just a bit misunderstood. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. To be fair, I'm on the fence.
Yeah.
I'm on the fence because ultimately, looking at those key moments, it's like, oh, if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have Howard Ashman. And if we didn't have Howard Ashman, I'm sorry, but we wouldn't have had Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin.
No.
God knows what we would have ended up with. And the fact he greenlit Pixar and the Toy Story, I mean, it's like, oh. So, yeah. I think where I'm on the fence is that he was good at foreseeing things and like bringing Howard in. Like he could see, you would be good in this company. And taking the Disney films into that musical direction, obviously we're so grateful for, because they're the most loved.
Yeah.
However, is he maybe responsible for Disney animation not progressing at that time? I don't know.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, like Pocahontas didn't do well, and I know that he was part of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously he split the teams.
Yeah, and
oh, do you know what? Actually, I meant to mention earlier, right? And me and Stephen have mentioned this, and this is another positive, right? And it came after the Black Cauldron. He came up with the idea that anyone in the department, right, could come up with a suggestion for a film.
Is this the gong thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, whether he did this at Dreamworks, I don't know. I hope so, because it is a good idea. Whether Disney continues this, I don't know. But yeah, the gong. So, like anyone, they could be story artists, they could be a producer, they could be from the paint, they could be whoever.
Yeah.
And they get together in a meeting and they've got the gong. So he does the gong and you get like, I don't know, a minute or 5 minutes and you have to pitch an idea. And apparently they were famous because so many of the future films came from those gong meetings. So yeah, that's another.
Yeah. I can see it at Dreamworks. Yeah. Him there with his gong. Right. Vision this. Bug's Life, but with ants. And we're going to get Sharon Stone, Woody Allen, and Sylvester Stallone. It's $1 million idea. And everybody was like, yes, Katzenberg, let's make it now. Such a bad film.
I must admit, I am glad that when he goes to do DreamWorks, that he doesn't try and copy what Disney has already done.
No. And he states that he didn't want to go into DreamWorks and make fairy tales. That's not what he wanted to do.
And again, Don Bluth didn't want to do that either.
No.
That's why he left. He felt that children were growing up and they weren't getting the opportunity to watch slightly darker. You know, he felt that children could see death in animated films.
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't get that until The Lion King.
Yeah.
But yeah, so no, very, very. So before we go, Stephen thinks he's a hero.
Okay.
Not a villain. Because obviously we've been speaking about DreamWorks, even though I know that this is a Disney podcast.
Yes.
We're swearing talking about DreamWorks. But in regards to animated films, I stand by my opinion on last year's films, and I think that Wild Robot was the best.
Oh, like was robbed.
And okay, I didn't see that Flow that's won the Academy Award, but who did? Like, what normal person did go and see that film?
Is that the Latvian one?
That's the cat one.
Aye. Yeah.
There's no speaking.
Yes, it was made in Latvia. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, hey, well done to them.
Yeah, go Latvia.
Yeah. But
moving on from Eurovision
to the cinema to see an animated film, no. But Wild Robot, wow. Like, it's been a long time since DreamWorks has, in my mind, been top, and they were definitely top for me as a fan of animated films. They did the best one last year. Right, on that note, well, thanks again for joining me.
Yeah, it was nice to do something different, and
yes. If there's anyone else that you listeners would love for us to dive deep into, let us know on socials, or leave us a comment, because we're halfway through the Renaissance era now, and we're gonna come across names now that you'll have heard, you know, even if you're not diehard Disney fans. So like we've just said, Chris Saunders, you know, Brenda Chapman, you know, these names we're going to hear. Okay, well, thank you for listening to us. Hope you were able to tell the difference between us. And hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the journey, or incredible journey, of Jeffrey Katzenberg. Whether you agree or disagree with our opinions, his contributions to the entertainment industry have reshaped the way stories are told and experienced. Let us know if you think he is a hero or a villain. Please follow us for more and leave us a review. Bye.
Bye.